All right, good morning, everybody. It is first thing, and we've got authors awake. This is great. What we're going to talk about this morning are the 5 pillars of publishing, and what is that? What does that mean? For the last couple of years, I've been looking for the underlying principles that rest beneath all of these practices and techniques and strategies and tactics. But what are the things beneath that drive those things? What are the 5 things that if we learn how to do them well, very nearly guarantee publishing success? And this is not an easy mode, this is not an easy button. It's just as hard as it was before, but at least we'll know what we need to focus on. We'll know what we need to work on. Who am I? My name's Kevin McLaughlin. I am a multiple USA Today bestselling author. I've got almost 100 books published, and more coming out all the time. One just came out yesterday. And I've been a full-time 6-figure author for many years. I also help out on the 20Books Facebook group and pass out free advice to as many people as I possibly can. So that's sort of my gig. Success at writing and publishing is not as complicated as we think. It's hard, but we can make it easier. There are 5 basic principles which, if managed successfully, boost our odds of success to nearly 100%. And I say nearly 100% because nothing is guaranteed, folks. But if we work on and master these 5 things, we'll be most of the way there. Also, there's a link to the slides at the end, so if folks want them, they can grab them. I'm seeing people taking pictures. This is not the only model by which one can achieve success. We all have heard this a bunch of times. This is a route, this is a path up a mountain, not a path up every mountain and not the only path. So as we go forward through this, take what you want, take what's going to work for you, and if it's not something that's resonating with you, leave it. But I ask that you think about it at least, because I put a lot of thought into these principles and a lot of effort into figuring out what makes publishing work at the bottom level. The first pillar is storytelling. Folks, if we're not telling a good story, we're done before we even start. And I think that too often we look at, okay, how can I market my book and how can I get more readers? And we forget that the first step is always write a good story. And so I hope that folks have been taking time to talk to some of the master authors who've been teaching craft classes here this week. If not in the sessions themselves, then maybe afterwards and stuff. Learning to write well is something that is absolutely essential. It's not about grammar or spelling, though. It's not about purple prose. Storytelling is about taking readers on a journey and capturing their minds and emotions. We want our readers to be transported to a realm of imagination. We want to grab them and drag them in. We want their emotions to feel what's happening in the book, and we want them to want to come back for more. We want them to come back for second helpings. Why just good, though? Why is just good storytelling enough? And we all know the saying, like perfect is the enemy of good. We moved from good to great the same way as we moved from mediocre to good, by practicing. Good storytelling helps readers fall in love with the characters and pushes them to turn the page. And if we get people in the door with good enough storytelling, and I'm basically saying we need to find a balancing point. Okay? If you wait until you're a great storyteller before you publish anything, you're never going to publish anything. So work on bringing your skills up to good, and then from there, work on building them further. How do we know if our storytelling is good enough, though? How do we know if the book's the problem? How do we know what warning signs to look for to say, hey, maybe this series isn't as well written as it could be. Maybe I need a developmental edit. Maybe I need some beta readers. Maybe I need to bring in something different. Maybe I need to tweak the story and change it. It is difficult to tell. The most powerful tool is reader feedback. Beta readers and dev editors can absolutely help, of course. All right, it's optimal to get this information before we publish, not afterwards. But the read-through rate is the #1 metric once the book is live for determining what readers think of it. So I aim for a 75% read-through rate from book 1 to book 2 in a series. That's for full price. If I have a 99-cent book 1, then the read-through rate usually drops to about 50%, but I consider anything above 50% on a for sale book 1 to a full price book 2. Anything above 50% is good. That's my numbers. Find out what yours are. If you don't know what your read-through is, figure it out. Sit down and do the math. You can calculate read-through really easily just by literally looking at how many copies of book 1 you sold and how many copies of book 2 you sold, and now you have your read-through rate by a percentage. It's just a fraction. Aim for that 75% number. That means you're really hitting the right readers with a good story. Or 50% if it's a sale book. If it's a free book, the numbers drop much, much lower. And I don't have super recent numbers on that because I don't do a lot of first in series free. But I know that's still a powerful asset for wide authors. Do understand that if you're publishing wide and you're using that first in series free, your read-through rate is going to be much lower than 50%. It's often as low as like 5%, maybe even lower than that. And the reason why is because you're fire hosing in this huge number of people, many of whom will never even read the book. Some of whom will read it, get a chapter in and say, I didn't like this, because they weren't the core audience. But you're bringing in a lot more people for a free book, generally speaking, which is why it works so well. And finally, strive to make each book better than the one before. It's something I work on with every single book I'm doing. The second pillar is packaging, and we talk about a lot of different pieces of packaging our books, but it really boils down to 3 things: post-work editing, cover art, and your blurb, your description. Packaging is everything that goes into making the product a better one from the moment you type the end. So all of your revision is technically part of packaging. Your beta readers are part of your packaging. If you do a developmental edit or a line edit, those are part of your packaging. The person who corrects all your typos is part of your packaging. These are all of the things that go from after the creative work is done into making a final, solid, ready for sale product. Packaging is all about AIDA. And I know this has been mentioned a couple of times before, but it stands for attention, interest, desire, and action. We'll be hitting that a little bit more in slides ahead. We want a professionally packaged product. Strive to make books look as pro as anything big publishers produce. That's the bar, folks. Back in 2008, or even 2011 when I first started publishing, you could get away with a really bad cover. Trust me, I did. My first covers, I did all my own covers early on. I couldn't afford to hire people for that stuff. My early covers were terrible, and the book still sold because people were a lot more tolerant of it back then. The bar is higher now. The bar is basically, most of the time, in order to maximize your chances of sales, you need to be looking just as good as anything produced by a New York City press. Maybe even better. A lot of indies, honestly, are on the top of the curve. They're the ones that the publishers, the big publishers, are following in trends a year or 2 later, because it takes that long for them to catch up. Editing is important. In this case, by editing, I mean everything we do after finishing the first draft. And here's where it breaks down a little bit, because the point of the whole editing, revision, and cleanup process is to take whatever you had when you typed the end the first time and turn it into something that readers will love. Now, some people type the end and then it's done. They can publish it. I've met writers like that. It's already it's already said. It's already ready. I can't do that. But if that's your method and it's working, that's awesome. No problems with that. Some people will revise. Some don't. I got rid of revision years ago on my books. I just got to the point where I didn't really need to anymore. Practice. Some writers will use developmental editors or beta readers. Some don't. Some writers are their own sole editors. That's okay too if it's working. Other writers have trouble finding their own errors when they're looking at stuff. They're blind to the typos. And if that's your state, get somebody else to step in and find those errors for you. What works for each writer in this step will vary based on their skills. Use what works for you, leave the rest. The goal is to create a book which delights our readers. This step is vital in making that happen. The methods in which we do it are entirely up to you. How many people here are still in their first 1,000,000 words? Like most of the room. Okay. So for the last 150 years or so, the publishing industry has had an adage saying that the first 1,000,000 words are your apprenticeship. Okay? Now that died out after the pulp era, and it's only come back over the last 15 years or so. Because in the 80s and 90s, when I was growing up and reading, a lot of authors never hit 1,000,000 words of published books in their entire career. They would get a trilogy out and maybe a second trilogy out, and then they'd be gone. One of the things that we're starting to see in the indie revolution, one of the things that's changed here, is the fact that all of a sudden we have authors with 200 books out. Or, like an author who's been doing this for 11 years with 89 books out. That's me. That was unheard of in the old days. But now we have writers who are accelerating their experience level much, much faster. All right, make your cover shine. Covers are more than pretty art. They have to convey the story, subgenre, and key themes. The thing that the AIDA element for this is attention. The cover is designed to grab the reader's attention. And we want it to grab the reader's attention at thumbnail size, and we want the reader to know from that thumbnail what our book is about. I think the next thing here is talking about, right readers and movie posters. That's right. So we want the right readers. We don't want the wrong ones. And everyone knows when they're looking at a Star Wars poster or an Avengers movie poster, or I can't think of any off the top of my head, but if you're looking at a romantic comedy, you know it's a romantic comedy within seconds of looking at the movie poster. The design tells you. If you're looking at a Star Wars movie, you know it's a Star Wars movie from looking at it within seconds. And that's our goal. The art on the cover doesn't have to be the prettiest thing we've ever seen. It does need to tell the reader what the subgenre is. It's not enough to just say it's a romance book with hearts on it. You have to drill down a little bit more than that optimally and be able to hit the tropes for your subgenre so that readers' attention is immediately grabbed. Study the competition, especially best-selling indies in your subgenre, to learn what's working well. So the reason why I say indies and not trad is because there are two types of trad books right now. There are trad books that sell because the author is really well known, and there are trad books that don't sell because the author isn't. And traditional publishers don't do a lot of cover work between the two, and so their covers tend to be, the covers, they don't need to have great covers for George R.R. Martin because they know that his next book is going to sell, assuming he writes it. Sorry, George. So they don't need to put as much work into that. They don't need to show the specific subgenre. For a book that isn't selling, for a book from a lesser known author, that's not going to give us the information we need because we want books that are selling. Indies, on the other hand, are great examples to pull from because indies who are selling well tend to have focused on this thing really, really hard. How many people have noticed that there's an awful lot of blue and orange covers in science fiction these days? All right, blue and orange with a starship on the cover means science fiction. Blue and orange with a starship on the cover shooting at another starship is military science fiction. It's pretty much that simple. And people, there are exceptions, and people will throw. I'm reading a book that's military science fiction with faces on the cover right now. So this is the other piece that is important here: is cover standards change. So always be looking at current trends. Right now, there's a growing trend in science fiction talking about having faces, people's character faces on the covers. Is that going to take off, and is that going to become the dominant new trend? It might, I don't know. But if it does, we may want to look into either recovering our old covers, or at least look into changing how we're covering our new ones. A book description is not a synopsis. And this is, as much as we fall down a lot of the time by trying to set up covers that are beautiful art but don't match the story properly, we also tend to have problems with writing book descriptions that are less sales copy and more, this is what happens in my story. This is the element of packaging which builds the reader's interest. So we've already got their attention with the cover. The little thumbnail looked interesting enough that they went click. And the very next thing they're going to look at is they're going to look at your blurb, your description. If that doesn't hook them. In fact, it's actually worse than that, because usually only the first 2 or 2.5, maybe 3 lines show up. So they have to click read more to get the rest of it. So if the first 2 lines of your book blurb don't get their interest, they're probably already clicking away to another page. And this is why you see people doing like a tagline, something really interest-grabbing for the first line or 2. Writers have plenty of practice writing synopsises of stories, but reading a synopsis is boring. Book descriptions should all be written with copywriting, and copywriting is a skill that takes time to learn. The way I learned it was the hard way. I didn't pick up the good books on it that are available out there. I would recommend using that method. However, my method was to sit down and pull apart as many different descriptions as I could. I looked at the people who were selling well in my genres. I copy-pasted their book descriptions, and then I started just breaking them down. Why are these things working? What about them is working? And so that is how I was able to figure out, okay, so we need an immediate grabbing headline, essentially. We need to have the part that's above the lead be, above the click me now, if you click to read more, has to be grabby. The rest of it has to be fairly fast-paced, has to continue retaining that interest. Because by the time we're done with this, by the time we're done reading this blurb, we want them to take the action. Well, we want them to take the action, essentially, of downloading the sample, at least. And the one other thing I want to add here is building emotional resonance. If you can find a way to pluck a reader's heartstrings with your book description, it will be stronger for it. You want to find some piece of the story which has an emotional resonance for the reader and put a mention of that in the blurb. And it can be something as simple as, maybe your story has a father who's trying to get back to their kids. That's plucking people's heartstrings. That's something that's almost universal in that we can all understand the emotions involved there. Romance novels are terrific for learning how to do this stuff because romance authors are amazing at plucking the emotional resonance strings. So that even if you don't write romance, go look at some of their blurbs, the top-selling ones, because they're master classes in how to pluck emotional strings. AIDA for books. A good cover builds interest in the product for the right readers. We don't want to bring in the wrong readers. We don't want the people who don't like what we're writing to go buy it, because then Amazon's going to get the wrong impression about who the readership is, and they're going to start advertising it. We've all heard the thing about my first book is out and I advertised it on Facebook and now my 50 family members have all bought it, and now for some reason Amazon thinks that crocheting and fishing are the primary things that my book is about, so they're advertising it to crocheters and fishers. This is not, not where we want to be. A good description creates interest in the book, in the reader, to check out the sample. The first pages of the book build the desire in readers to know more, which results in readers taking the action we want to buy the book. If any of those pieces is out of balance, if any of those pieces isn't working right, then we're going to lose readers at that step. So if the good cover doesn't grab the right people, if it grabs the wrong people or doesn't grab anyone at all, then it's failing. It's not working for us. If the description isn't building that interest enough that readers go and grab the sample and check out those first pages, then we're going to lose people at that point. If the first pages, if the storytelling there, back to the first pillar again now, if the storytelling in those first pages isn't strong enough, we're going to lose the readers there. And they're never going to take that action we want, which is to buy the book. And this brings us to the third pillar, promotion. Everything about AIDA helps conversions, but to convert, we need to get eyes on the page. Promotion is anything that we do to accomplish that. So we're casting our net out into the world, and we're hoping to draw in eyeballs and get them on the sales page. That's everything that promotion is. Any means we use to accomplish this is good. Anything that draws eyeballs into our page is a good thing. Targeted promotions are best. These focus on bringing pre-qualified leads to the sales page. What's the best targeted promotion authors have available? The best, most powerful, most targeted promotion we can do is almost always going to be our email list. Because our newsletters. Because those are all pre-qualified people. They joined our list because they like us, or they liked something we did. So they're all predisposed to like our books already anyway. That's one of the best, most powerful targeting methods we have. Paid ads are also important. The primary ones right now are Facebook, Amazon ads, and BookBub ads. As times change, new venues will open. And I'm not going to go into all the specifics about Amazon ads. I'm not going to go into the specifics about Facebook ads because there have been people here running great classes on that this week. But a combination of different tools is usually going to be our best method of getting those eyeballs in here. All right, newsletters. Back to this. In terms of dollars earned per dollar spent, this is my most effective promotional tool. Build an email list as soon as possible. Continue building as often as possible. Use a reader magnet. Story offered for free in exchange for email subscription. So what I do is I write a reader magnet for each of my major series. I write a short story, and then I advertise it at the back of the book. So every time somebody finishes one of my books, they see a little ad, sign up for my email list, and you can get this short story that tells the secret tale of how they found the ship in the first place, or that tells the secret tale of the first day on campus at the university, or whatever. Some kind of background story, something extra about the characters that draws them in. Paid promotions almost always work better and faster than free promotions will. So in terms of the time spent and the impact, your Amazon ads and Facebook ads are almost always going to be more effective than free promotional methods, the sweat equity methods. But sweat equity methods do work. There's some people here who are doing great stuff with YouTube. I've seen people putting up pieces of their audiobooks on YouTube, even entire audiobooks on YouTube, and making money at it, which is really cool. But Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, TikTok, there's a ton of places where you can build a following. Standing out from the crowd is important. Offer value. People don't stay unless you give them something they want or need. Entertainment and information are the biggest needs we can easily fill. So if we want to build, if your goal is to become an author, a paid full-time author, then the goal should be to focus on that, not on becoming the best TikToker on the planet. It doesn't mean you can't use TikTok as a tool, as one of the tools in your toolbox. But the social media platform shouldn't be the focus. The authorship should be. So always look to whatever tools are working right now, but bring it all back in some way to the authorship. So my core element for my promotional stuff is my email list. I've got about 20,000 people there. My goal is to get my newsletter up to 50,000 over the next couple of years, and I'm not going to stop until I have over 100,000 subscribers. That sounds like a lot, and it is. But that's my core thing, and that's where I draw everything to. So if I decide to start pushing Twitter sometime, just as an example, I don't hang out on Twitter much, but let's say I did, I would start using Twitter to immediately start driving people to my email list. Somebody who was using Patreon as the core of their business might instead start using Twitter to drive people to their Patreon. But find some kind of real estate that you own where you can actually collect customer data, those essential emails, those names, that information about your readers that you want, and draw people there from all of these other venues. The fourth pillar is productivity. Practice makes perfect. We improve at writing by writing. Each new book is another chance to win fans. Each new book helps us achieve income, a living income from our work. So we're essentially paid by the page or by the word, more or less. If you know that your next book is going to make you $10,000 and it's 100,000 words, you know exactly what you're making per word. You're asking me to do math at 8:42 in the morning? So, yeah, don't ask me to do math at this hour. That's all right. So if we want to double our income, one of the best ways of doing it is to double our output. That's not easy, though. Productivity has a lot of benefits, and the authors are basically paid by the book. Each good book we write earns us X dollars, where X is some unknown amount. If we want to earn more, we need to either increase X, generally by doing more paid marketing, or increase books per year. New books help visibility. The more books, the more visible we are. Every single book we release is another ad for all of our other books. So when readers read something that we wrote and they love it, one of the very first things they do is they go onto Amazon or wherever they bought the book from, and they look up the rest of our stuff. In fact, a lot of the time these days, readers will actually do that before they buy, because they want to know that there's other books available before they start investing in an author, because their time is actually more valuable to them than the couple of bucks they're spending on the book. And nobody wants to read, let's say I have 2 books out, and the last one, they both came out a month apart, but I haven't written anything in 2 years. I haven't published anything in 2 years. So the reader's going to see book 1 and book 2 of a series, and then nothing else. And guess what? No matter how many paid ads I throw at that book 1, it's going to be a hard sell, because readers are going to see that as an abandoned trilogy. And they may be right. If I haven't published anything in 2 years, what am I doing? Productivity is one of the most effective, I said more effective, it's actually one of the most effective forms of sweat equity promotion. And the reason why is because we're doing more to build the business. We're not just bringing in eyeballs. So if I go spend an hour a day, 7 days a week on TikTok, I know it's popular right now. I'm using it as an example, even though I'm not actually doing much on TikTok. But let's say I was spending an hour a day on TikTok. I'm building my platform there. I'm grabbing new readers. I'm directing them into my books. But if I was spending that hour a day writing instead, I would be doing sort of the same thing, because I'm eventually going to get that ad up in the form of a new book faster. And finding a balancing point between producing new words, producing new books, and promoting the old ones is always going to be an ongoing challenge for us. A supermajority of full-time authors produce 4+ books per year. Most of the time, if somebody is writing full-time, they're producing 4 or more books per year at this point. 4 seems to be the number, the magic number for whatever reason. I see more people, I see people who have reached the 7-figure level by producing like 6 to 8 books a year, drop back down to 4, and stay there, which is really, really cool if you think about it, because you can kind of ease back on the throttle at that point. Writing more equals more practice, which means our skills tend to increase faster as well. And this is a really key point that I talk to people about with productivity a lot. And that's that the writer who's producing a book a year, like we used to back in the old bad days, is only growing at a rate of 1 book a year. If you're only writing 80,000 words a year, then you're only getting 80,000 words of practice, 80,000 words of skill improvement, 80,000 words of craft improvement. Now, if you're doing that every month instead, you're getting 12 times the practice. It's literally the same thing as somebody picking up a violin 12 times as much over the course of a year. It's that much more practice, it's that much more skill gain, it's that much more improvement. And as I've had pointed out to me when I bring this up in the past, you only gain the skills if you practice with an eye toward improvement with every book. So if you're just writing as fast as you can and don't care about whether or not you're improving and don't strive to make each book better than the last one, then you're not going to see massive skill gain from it. You probably still see some because we're still practicing. But we get better at what we practice. And if we practice writing badly, we will get better at writing badly. If we practice writing well, then we will get better at writing well. And the more practice we put in, the faster that will happen. Everyone can improve their productivity from where they are. Don't compare your present to someone else's, however. We're not all starting from the same point. Okay, I write about 3,000 words per hour of clean copy that doesn't need revision. Yes, you can all throw tomatoes at me now. That is the result of several million words of practice to get there. I worked on learning how to get out of my own way when I was writing. That let me draft faster. I worked on writing the cleanest drafts I could so that I could ditch the revision part of the process. It didn't happen overnight. It took time. But now, instead of having to spend as much time on revision as I do writing the first draft, I can write another first draft. So by dropping that element, by building up my skills to the point where I could drop that element, I essentially doubled my annual production, or half the number of hours I'm spending working on it if I still want to produce the same number of books, because then you can just go take a vacation instead. Know that writing every day. Write every day if possible, every day you can if not. This keeps the story focused in our minds and our brains focused on it during non-writing hours. So, I know that there are folks out there who will sit down one weekend a month and write a book in 3 days and then not write anything else until the next month. I'm not talking to you. But for most of us, our brains are very, very plastic. And neuroplasticity says that if you you will build stronger connections by repeating a process over and over. And the more time and energy we commit to something, the more our brains are like, oh, this is really important, because we're doing this every day. And so it makes those connections much stronger, they work faster, our storytelling gets better. It's more complicated than that, but at the core, at the bottom level, that's basically what we're talking about. Know that it is possible. Everyone in this room could write 1 million words per year. It is not difficult. It is not hard. It's just a lot of hours of work. It's not a high difficulty thing. If you can sit down and write 1,000 words, then you can write 1,000,000. It's just a matter of putting in the time. Writing is a lot like exercising. The more we do it, the better we get, but also writing more improves words per hour and stamina on the hours we work. So I started running this fall after not having run for a long time. All right. If I had decided the beginning of September, I haven't run for like 5 years, but I'm going to do a marathon, I would have broken myself. All right. So if you've just finished your first book and you're like, I'm going to write 1,000,000 words this year, maybe, but maybe not. Don't break yourself. Don't burn yourself out. Don't injure yourself, because that's what burnout really is. Burnout is a mental injury. We have overstretched that muscle. We've overstressed ourselves, and we've done a mental injury that takes time to heal. We want to avoid that. Just like when we're running, we don't want to pull a muscle because we worked it too hard. We don't want to burn out, so we want to practice and build up over time. All right. I have been working on the 5th pillar all year long because last year it was something a little bit different, and it was progress was what it was. It was the idea of continuing to improve, continuing to get better as we go along. And I've sort of merged that into the other stuff, if you notice. I was talking about how we get better at doing these things through practice, and so I merged the progress into the other things because it didn't really fit in that last pillar. But by poise, I'm really talking about more than anything else about attitude, but it's the best P word I could find for it. I was trying to put them all into P's. I can't find a P for storytelling yet, folks, sorry. Poise here is the old definition: equilibrium, balance. Poise, the attitude we take into our work with us, matters more than perhaps any other pillar. Folks, most authors last 5 years or less. In 2012, I was in an anthology of the up-and-coming science fiction and fantasy authors, the indies of the future. We were going to do cool stuff. By 2016, 4 years later, there were 3 of us left. 3 out of 13. Now, interestingly enough, those 3 are still here. So, 10 years later, the 3 of us are still sticking around. Attitude, poise, is the main difference between those who remain and those who do not. Poise writers see a new problem and immediately look for a solution or a workaround. Poise writers see a major industry change and seek the new opportunities rather than complaining about things not being the same as they used to be. Poise writers do not shame themselves over failures because failure is an expected part of the process. And that is so essential. You are going to fail. I have failed. I have failed many times. You are going to fail too. If you stick around long enough, you will have multiple glorious failures. And that's okay. It's part of the process. It's normal. Poise writers do the work required to keep their balance even when things are rocky, because it's easy to keep your balance when things are going smoothly. It's much harder to keep balanced when things are hard. Balance keeps us from burning out by forcing ourselves to do more than we're able. If you wrote 100,000 words last year, please don't go out and try and write 1,000,000 words next year because you heard me talking about it. Build up to it. It took me years to go from writing 1 book a year to writing over 1,000,000 words a year. It took me years of practice, years of effort. And some people do it much faster than that. I'm not the fastest person in the room. But it will take time. Give yourself the time. Determination drives us to keep striving for more this month than the last, more this year than before. Balance reminds us to refill the well constantly. We absorb new stories to help us come up with new ideas and improve our craft. How many people in here read at least once a week? How many people here read your own genre? Okay, good. So I am always reading, and some people don't like this. Some people prefer to not read books similar to what they're writing, and that's okay too. You're still learning craft and you're still collecting ideas. Art is the act of connecting a bunch of different things in new ways. And so I go around reading. I read every single day. I read for about an hour or two a day, every single day. I also watch a lot of good TV, and I watch some bad TV. I watch good movies and bad ones, and I try to learn pieces from all of them. I work as hard as I can to bring in all those little pieces, to refill the well, because all of those little pieces are floating around on the side of my head, and sooner or later, they're going to connect up in some new and interesting way and create a new story idea. Determination drives us to see what else we can do, what new ways we can push ourselves to excel. Too much determination can lead to burnout. With balance as well, we get controlled and focused determination, and it's one of the strongest assets we can have. And what I mean by that is, I've seen a lot of writers be like, I'm going to go from never having written a book to full-time in 6 months. I've seen it happen. I've seen authors do it. I've also seen most of those authors burn out. I've seen them flame up, become really well known, and then vanish entirely. And it's enormously consistent. So find that balance point between what you want to do and what you're actually capable of today, and then stretch what you're capable of today a little bit more each day. And that way you can avoid the burnout. Again, folks, this isn't the only road, but it's a good road. Remember AIDA, attention, interest, desire, and action. Those are the steps for promoting our stuff. Get eyes on the sales page to convert them. Write well and write lots. Attitude, poise, and balance matter. When the next big change happens, when the author-verse is all absolutely convinced that the sky is falling and this is the end of everything, be the person in the room who takes a long, deep breath and says, hey, what if we do this? Maybe this will work, and maybe it won't, and they'll tell you why, but maybe it will. Or maybe you'll be able to start working with some people and coming up with some new ideas for what will work. I've never seen someone master these 5 pillars and fail to achieve writing success. If you're missing one, you still got a good chance. If you're missing 2, iffy. If you're missing 3 or more, you're probably not going to do very well. But by building the skills in these 5 crucial areas, we can all push our careers up to the next level. Thank you very much. And we've got like 2 minutes left. If anybody has a quick question, there's a microphone, but we have to make it fairly short. I will be outside afterwards if anybody has other questions that don't get caught during this last minute and a half. Yes? Oh, I'll just ask the question, I'll repeat it.
Explain read-through that whole concept.
Explain read-through. Okay. Read-through is the percentage of readers who read book 1 who went on to book 2, or who bought book 1, because we can't tell if they read it. The percentage of readers who bought book 1 who went on to book 2. And we basically look at the purchases for book 1, the purchases of book 2, we now have a fraction. That's literally it. And if you're in KU, divide the total pages read by the number of KE/NPC for that book, and then you'll have an estimate for how many people read that book. Yes?
So I have a 20-year marketing career, right, as a marketing consultant in retail and business to business. Beyond the basics, what do you think is the most important skill set to develop on a more higher skill set level?
Ooh. What is the most important skill set? These 5.
Beyond like the basics, beyond like developing a newsletter, like what have you found that is really like, if you could turn that on, that skill set on, would like propel you into the next level?
Writing more words.
Writing more words?
Most people are not writing. If you're looking at one piece that more people would get benefit from than anything else, it's learning to write more words.
So producing more product.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
No problem.
Would you recommend the 99 books in the series ready to rapid release. Do you recommend a 99-cent first book?
I use 99-cent books to pulse prices. So I don't leave things at 99 cents all the time, but I do drop to that price periodically when I'm doing a big push for a series. Okay, and some folks were out of time. I will be around, so if you have other questions, please stick around, and I'm happy to ask them. Whew.